Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. So we're going continuing from the last video, and over here I've added the background color pink to this one over here. And whenever you know over here I've added the background color pink, so every single even rows get the pink color. You see over here, and I'm trying to add the background color whenever it's hovering. So we're gonna run the code to see the hovering effect. Oh, I didn't add the background color. Okay, so we're gonna add some like maybe gray color to it. So whenever we hover, you can see that every single row changes. You can also add different colors for different rows, like whether you can add it to the even rows or the odd rows. Now over here, I want to make sure that the heading stays different from the rows. So we're gonna try to decorate the heading. To decorate the heading, I'm gonna add th because that's where the headings are. And we're gonna add some padding to the top, maybe about 10 pixels, so that we get some space on the top. And I'm going to also add some padding bottom, so we have some space at the bottom. So I'm going to be adding about 12 pixels for this, and then I'm going to go ahead and add text align, and I'm going to add it to the left side, so they're gonna be aligned to the left side, not on the center. And also I'm gonna be adding a background color. Now for the background color, I'm gonna go with this color, the whole pink. And also for the text color, for just give the color, and I'm gonna have it white. Now let's run the code to see the difference. You can see how much different it looks, and I think it looks so beautiful. So this is how you make this table, and how you style your tables. Now that we've seen this, now let's talk about table borders. The border property we'll use to specify the width, the style, and the color of the table borders. The border property has also a shorthand property. It's the normal borders that you use for your other styles as well. First you mention the width, and then the style, and then the color. So you can specify borders for table as well as the elements inside of it, as well as the headings, as well as the data that they give inside of this. So you can see over here that we are trying to put the borders for all of these separate. Now if you don't include this heading and the data, it's gonna look like this, where you don't have any borders for your elements. So you simply need to add th and td to also include the borders, so that they too have them. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the border color. So you can see over here, this is how a table would look with the border color. So to add a border color, let me add green and run the code, and you can see the difference that's made here. The next, we're going to talk about double borders. In the example above, you can notice that you have some double borders over here. That is because we are also specifying the elements as well, so they also have a separate borders. So we're going to have a look at another example so that we can collapse these borders and make them into a single one. This we've already saw before itself on how to do the border collapse property. So it simply connects that one, making it a single border. Next, we're going to talk about table padding. Now, table padding is really important, as we already saw there, how it gives up space, a lot of space between the borders and the data that is present inside the tables. So if you're creating a table, make sure you use border padding, and you can see that all of these include borders, but they don't look double ones because we have used border collapse, so they collapse onto one another. Next off, we're going to talk about the border spacing. Now, border spacing property will set the distance between the borders. Now you need to remember that this property will work only when you set a border collapse. So to separate, that means you shouldn't collapse your borders. That means each element must have its own borders so that we can have border spacing. You can see over here, over the first example, the border spacing is 15 pixels. And over the next example, we have set two border spacings. The first 15 pixels is for the horizontal spacing, and the next one is for the vertical spacing. The horizontal spacing of 15 pixels comes up over here, and the border spacing about over 50 pixels comes up over here. Now we're going to talk about outside table borders. That means we only want the border around the table but not inside. We have already talked about this, where you should only include the table and not the other elements so that you don't have any borders for elements that are inside your table. The next one is the question over here. We CSS properties used to remove the double borders in a table. You simply need to add border collapse. Next, we're going to talk about the table size. In tables, you can also set the size of your tables. For example, a width and the height. You can also give them in pixels and percentage and auto. To know more about these percentage, I've already talked about them, I guess, in the fonts. I don't remember, but you can check out my previous videos. Or you can go through these websites to look at percentages and how they work. So over here, to create a table that spans the entire screen, we use with 100%. We've already seen in our before example on creating a table, we have already used with 100% to make our table span to entire screen and take the entire width of the screen. Over here, they have used the width property and the height property. You can see over here on using with 100%, it takes up the entire screen. Now I'm going to show this one more time, taking it out and running the code. And you can see if you don't use that, it will not take up the entire space of the screen. Now, if you want to span only half, then make sure your width is set to 50%. Or you can also fix it to a pixel range so that it's not. And then if you want to calculate the width based on the browser, then you can simply use auto. Where using auto, it's calculated based on the width of the screen. So when I remove this width and then run the code, now with this you don't see much a lot of difference because width is default, by default it is set to none. So you don't see a lot of difference when I'm doing this, setting the table width to auto, and doesn't set it to auto, it doesn't matter. It's already by default auto. Next, the table height. The table height is used to set the properties of the height. For example, in the below table, you can see that the headers are set to 70 pixels. So let's try it ourselves and see how does this look. And you can see over here that we are setting the width to 100%, and in the height, you can see how much it is taking the cell space when you're having a height of 70 pixels. Let me show you guys how 100 pixels look like. I don't really make a lot of shiny over here. Now let me show you a fixed, another fixed height. Let me show you 30%. I'm gonna have a font size of 32 pixels. Sorry, 19 pixels. You can see that. Now, okay. Now I'm going to remove this. Now it doesn't really make sense a lot. Okay, so basically it depends on the table. So let's have it height of 400 pixels in the parent, and let's have a height of 100%. Sorry, yeah, 100% on the child. Oh yeah, there we go. Now let's reduce it to 50%, and there we go. You can see over here that it does make a lot of difference. I'll set it to 100 back again. You can see how much it's setting up the height of the table borders headers. Now let's set it to 30% or 400 pixels, and this is how it's gonna look. Oh god. So which property is used to set the width of